Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh, baby, live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com. And across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends, and good morning to you on this beautiful hump day. That's right. What day is it? Hump day. Middle of the week, downhill slide to Firearms Friday. We're ready to go, ready to get into this, ready to jump in with both feet and get things going. We are continuing our discussion with potential candidates for statewide office. That will be our mission here between now and, I guess. Well, first of all, it'll be August 20th. That'll be the first deadline that we're working towards. And then after that, it will go all the way down to November. I mean, it's just going to be a hucklebuck downhill slide all the way to Election Day as we continue to interview a lot of candidates. I will say that I am a bit surprised that after sending out over 100 emails to various candidates as listed on the State of Alaska's Division of Elections website, I will tell you, it's interesting. I think I got 4 or 5 bounce backs from candidates whose email was improperly listed on the website. And there were probably just as many candidates who had no email or contact information at all, which I find a little interesting. If you're going to run for office, you probably should have some kind of contact information where people can find you: websites, email addresses, phone numbers, etc. And that it's been a little slow in getting information back. So I want to basically, I guess I will pre-thank all the candidates who have actually responded so far. We're already booking interviews out into, I just booked my first August interview, so it's going to be a while. But we got the next couple weeks are full up right now. We'll see what happens as we get closer to the end of the month and getting into that election time. Coming up today, Russel Wyatt is going to join us here in just a second. He is running for District 19. In the Anchorage area. And then we've got candidate up for re-election, Julie Coulombe, is going to be joining us in hour 2 for District 5. Tomorrow, Justin Ruffridge will be joining us from Soldotna, and State Senator Rob Myers. So we've got full up for this week, and then, of course, Firearms Friday. And then next week is already full as well. So we got a full boat for the next couple weeks, and we'll see what the future brings here. But this is always an interesting time. I like to talk to candidates or potential candidates and see what's going on. See what's going on before we jump into it with Russell. Ryan reminds me that we need to throw a shout out to the veterans. For the Veterans Park renovation project in Fairbanks. There's a meeting at Pioneer Park tomorrow night in Fairbanks at 5:30 to release their concepts on the Veterans Park renovation project in Fairbanks. 5:30 at Pioneer Park tomorrow. So that's a quick reminder before we jump into it. All right. But now it's time to get into it with our candidates. I see that Russell is hanging out in the green room. ready to go. Let's just jump on board there and see what's happening. We'll get him on. We'll continue on from there. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. Just woke up.
Good morning. Just woke up. Well, that's it's early in the morning. I know we're trying to get a jump on the day here. So Russell, you're running for District 19. I know you and I have spoken in the past. You have run for office before. But let's start fresh and act like we don't know each other and see where we go from here. So give us a little bit of who you are, where you came from, and we'll get started. We'll get started right there.
I moved from Washington about 13 years ago. I'm running for District 19. I actually have two opponents this time. One of the opponents is my ex-wife's best friend. So that's interesting.
Just keeping it in the family, I see. Yeah.
And then I'm also sorry, I'm still waking up. I didn't even have time to make coffee. I'm running for House District 19, which is Mountain View, Airport Heights, part of Russian Jack, and I guess we can just get into it.
Sure. So what made you decide, I guess, is the question. I mean, this is a big commitment, obviously. What made you decide to jump into this? Was it a single issue? Was it a complex of issues?
Well, the first time I didn't like the legislator
where do we, what was the one thing that made you lose your mind and decide to do this?
The first time it was the fact that they just kept stealing the PFD. This time, I'm against the legislator giving themselves an illegal 67% wage increase. That really bothers me.
That bothers you. What kind of background do you have that you think can give you the leg up here, or what qualifies you in this case in your mind to jump into the legislative office?
Well, I'm not going to steal from the people, that's for sure. So I actually have a bill pre-written that tells all future increases should be up to the voters. I firmly believe that. I'm also going to donate the illegal 67% wage increase back to my district because the voters didn't give it to me. So.
Okay. Now, originally and in the past, you had a run in your last race as a Democrat. And now you're running as an independent. Now, on this program, a lot of times we see that happening, and maybe it's our cynicism showing, but we feel a lot of times that is in some ways kind of a ploy to say, well, I'm not really, feeling like maybe they couldn't compete with the Democrats. I'm not really a Democrat, or the Republicans rather. I'm just an independent, and so you can vote for me. Is this a real change of heart? Did you have a fundamental shift with what's going on with the Democrats? Is it a way to separate yourself from the current Democratic incumbent? Why the shift? Why the shift?
One of the things you did last time I was on your show, you actually called me out because there were so many things that I didn't agree with the Democratic Party. Where I'm from in Washington, you either have to be a Republican or you have to be a Democrat to win. And so I found out that Alaska is much different. We actually have a lot of independents that won their election. You called me out on so many different things. You're like, you're not a Democrat.
Right. Well, I remember that you were a little shocked to realize that all the things that you were talking about were not necessarily aligned with the current Democratic Party. So was it shortly after that, did you realize that, hey, I might be a independent / libertarian, whatever? I mean, is that what you kind of came to?
Yeah, because, I seem to piss off both sides. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hey, stop, don't steal my material. That's my line. I'm the ones that everybody's mad at me kind of thing. All right, Russell, let's talk a little bit about the PFD. You said that's kind of your key issue here. They've obviously been chipping away at the PFD since 2017. We've seen, it go up, it go down. But the bottom line is that it seems like the legislature's current fiscal policy is going to essentially consume all of the PFD sometime in the future. And depending on what numbers you look at and who you believe, anywhere from 28 to 45, 50 months from now, we could be down to almost nothing in the PFD. So what are your thoughts on what they should be doing? with how they should be paying out the PFD.
Well, for one, I believe that we need to just follow the statute that's been on the books for decades.
Right. Well, I mean, that's a great point. But then the second question then becomes of that, how do we pay for all the government that they propped up at this point? Because that's the thing. They're utilizing the PFD to prop up this government spend. And we're talking about $700 million if we paid the full PFD. So where does that money come from? And or is there the political will, or do you have a plan to propose cuts that would reduce the spend down to not force some other kind of revenue to have to fill that gap?
Well, yeah, we do definitely need cuts. We could cut the budget by $1.8 billion by repealing the 67% wage increase that legislators gave themselves. That would save almost $2 million a year. That's one cut that we could make. I firmly believe that it should be up to the voters to increase wage increases, because if I worked for you and told myself that I was going to give myself a 67% wage increase, you would just laugh at me, right? So I think that it was illegal what they did. Only thing I can think of is we need cuts in administrative at the school levels. There's lots of cuts to be made.
Do you think it's illegal or unethical? Because, I mean, obviously they've done it, so it must have some kind of legal standing. But was it illegal, this wage increase, or unethical, or just ill-timed?
I would say both. I mean, they're stealing our PFD too. Theft is illegal. You have to ask the voters for a wage increase, since the voters are employers.
Well, I mean, I would love to see that, because I think I know the answer to what every one of those questions would be. But that's one of the challenges with a representative democracy, is that, we elect them to represent us. If we had to vote on every issue, it would be chaos out here, and it would be democracy, which is two wolves and a sheep deciding on what's for dinner. So they have to have some kind of independence in their representational, votes and things like that. But at the same time, as I said during the debate on this raise, they should read the room, right? They should see what's going on in the economy. It seems like that the state legislature has pretty much shown that there is a complete divorce between the public economy and the private economy. It seems like everything that they do is focused on putting money into the government sector and the government economy, and they don't really seem to care what's happening in the private economy. That raise was one of the prime examples of that, because people are struggling. We had the recession, we had COVID, we're still trying to make it work. We've got runaway inflation, we've got interest rates spiking, and they said, well, we've been doing such a good job, we'll give ourselves a 60+% raise. And that seemed to me to be, ill-timed and, again, while not illegal per se, definitely unethical.
What was I gonna? Okay, sorry, my dog came in the room. So I don't see how it's. I agree with you that it's unethical, but I don't see how it's not legal either. Because I don't know. Well, I do have a bill that would make it illegal, and it would be up to the voters. I think I sent you a copy of that bill.
Yeah. Yep, I have a copy of it. We'll go over that here in just a moment. We're talking with Russel Wyatt, who's running for State House District 19 in the east side of Anchorage. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we will continue with him, continue this conversation, and see where we go from here. Don't forget, you can always join us on Facebook if you'd like to be part of the conversations during the commercial breaks. In the background, see behind the scenes, so to speak. You can go over to facebook.com/Michael Duke Show, or you can go to YouTube as well. Either one of those. We'll be back with more of the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Back with more, and Russel Wyatt right after this.
is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show. Radio.
Okay, we're in the commercial break with Russel Wyatt, who is, again, candidate for District 19. Chris over on Twitch says, "This is my district. I'm listening intensely." Fat Ray on YouTube says, "Were you fleeing Washington or invading Alaska?" So what was your purpose for coming? You said you came here, 13 years ago? What was the impetus for coming to the Great Land here?
I definitely was fleeing Washington.
What was driving you out? Give me a little bit of background.
Where I come from, we have a massive homeless population. I think there's like 37% of the town is actually homeless. That would be part of it. We have a 10-cent sales tax. The economy is really poor. The largest employer in the town I was living in, Walmart. You actually had to know someone to work at Walmart too. It's just a terrible place. And I've always had to come into Alaska, and I feel that dream. So
nice. What's your background, Russell? What do you do for a living? What's we didn't get into that too much there.
I'm a network engineer for GCI, and I also work at part-time as a manager at Domino's.
Oh, okay. So you're two fisting it. You got the dual career track there. Somebody else just said something here. What do you stand for? Terry's asking, what do you stand for? What is your overall arching position on, I guess, state government and government in general?
We need a much smaller government. The one that we have right now, we can't afford.
And again, how do you? I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you. Okay, I'll say that from the very beginning. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. But the question is, how do you convince all the normies that that's what we need to do? Because we've got multiple generations of people who've gone through school who've been taught that the answer to every problem or question is government, larger government. And so now you're fighting against not only the government workers and the institutions themselves, but against this perception that we just couldn't do things without all this, governmental intervention. How do you fight against that?
We just keep talking about it. I noticed throughout the House floor that someone will bring it up, and then it dies, and then they don't talk about it again for another 30, 60 days, and we just need to keep talking about it.
So bringing it to the forefront, you think will wake these cats up, or because it's obviously
not only do we need to bring it up, but we need to keep bringing it up. We can't just let it die. It can't be like a 2-minute soundbite and then just let it die. That's what a lot of people seem to do.
Yeah, well, it's an avoidance tactic. They don't want to talk about it because I think some of them in their hearts know that there's some truth to it, and they don't want to talk about it because they want to go. I'm sorry, Brian just said, now may be a good time to ask you about my internet issues. I have GCI internet here at the house, and it is unstable, Mabel. Let's just put it that way.
It really is. And a lot of GCI's problems is they're using old technology, and they have no desire to really upgrade it until they're forced to. We have no competition, so.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. It's tough when you got the fastest connection you could possibly get, and it's still as unstable as the blowing winds. It's kind of tough. Let's see. How do we fight about it? Let's see. I'm sorry. I'm reading Kelly's comment here. How do we fight about it? It's not up to elected employees to do anything about it. It's up to us, we the people, to keep these guys in check. Do you agree with that? Is it up to the people? Is it up to the elected officials? Who's responsible all the way around?
Well, it is up to the people, because we have to vote people in that will actually care. That's the biggest thing. We keep voting the same people in over and over and over and expecting different results. But
that's the definition of insanity. All right, let me get things going. The ding means that we're about to return to the radio. So let's jump back into it and see where we go from here. Russel Wyatt is our guest. He's an independent candidate for House District 19. We're going to continue on here. And Russell, feel free to extemporize a little bit more when I ask you some of these questions to give us a few more details if you think about it as we go through. We're going to go through the list of things that you sent me here in the email, and we'll start off right now. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
That's not right. I'm a perfect angel, not a pain in the anything. I'm a perfect angel. We're continuing now with our candidate, Russel Wyatt. He is running as an independent for House District 19, which is Mountain View and the whole kind of east side there of Anchorage, running against the current incumbent, is Genevieve Mina, in that race. But we're going to talk a little bit about here some of his issues. He has what he calls some key initiatives. Now, Russell, do you have a website? Somebody asked during the break if you had a way to contact you, if you have a website or a Facebook page or anything right now. I'm sorry, Russell. I apologize. I'm sorry I had you muted there for a second. Go ahead.
Oh, I actually do have a website. I didn't have one last time, so
okay.
Yay for improvements.
Okay. What is the website?
It is Wyatt for. Oh, sorry. I have to pull it up. It didn't let me pick it, so.
All right.
One second. I know I sent it to you too.
Oh, did you? Because I missed it. I missed that in the email then. So we'll pull it up here.
It's WyattForHouse.com. Sorry.
WyattForHouse.com. All right. WyattForHouse.com if you want to go out and take a look at it. You sent me a list of what you called your key initiatives. So let's go through those. And you've already touched on the one, introducing legislation to repeal the 67% wage increase, and then making all future raises subject to voters' approval. I applaud this idea. How have you talked to your constituents? Have you gone door to door yet? Have you knocked on doors? Have you talked to people? What is the people's reaction? Or maybe if you've talked to legislators, what do you think their reaction is to this piece as well?
Well, I have talked to a few legislators. They don't like it. But I have talked to a lot of constituents about it, and they seem to love it. So that's why I went to my next one, where I'm going to donate mine back to my community in a form of a raffle, because it's not mine. My people didn't give it to me. But yeah.
Right. Okay. You also talked about constitutionalizing the PFD and establish a repayment plan for the funds previously withdrawn. Now, the problem is that they've transferred a lot of those funds out of the ERA into the corpus of the fund. So, I mean, that's going to be an uphill battle. What does your constitutional amendment look like? Is it an enshrining of the current language of the statute? Is it similar to Ben Carpenter's HJR 7, where it would just enshrine the actual fact that a payout must occur according to statute? What is your vision of a constitutionally protected PFD?
My vision is, we should follow the law, and it's been on the law for a very long time, and it was never broken until they started stealing from it. So I think that's the statute we need to follow.
So enshrining the actual statute as it sits right now. Okay. Let's go over to looking at number 3, which is commit to identifying and addressing corruption in government, ensuring accountability across all political affiliations. As we mentioned earlier, you had been a Democrat. You came on the show last time and learned that you really didn't identify as a Democrat, that really your positions were more closely aligned with independent or libertarian ideals. So what do you think you're going to find? Have you looked at things already, is the big question. Have you done a little bit of pre-homework and started looking at identifying or addressing any corruption in government? How do you envision that? Give me what does that look like in your mind?
Well, if elected, I'm going to find out all the people that say one thing and then go to Juneau and vote against another thing. A lot of it is people in their districts don't know. They vote for a person, and then they're just kind of blind to it. And so that person gets elected and then says something completely different in Juneau, and then they go back and say, hey, still vote for me because you voted for me the first time. So this time I'm gonna like find out all the bad eggs, and there's a lot of people running. I don't know if you've noticed. I'm sure you've noticed. There's a lot of people running this time, so there's going to be a lot of changes. There's going to be a lot of new bad apples, and I'm going to go to their districts and let their people know. Say, hey, you voted for this guy, and he promised you this and did this, and that's we need education in all these districts. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to other people's districts and be like, hey, you voted this guy for this reason, but he did this in Juneau. Do you still want to vote? We need to change it. So,
right. No, I mean, I would not disagree with that. I'm just looking for a plan to figure out how we do that. And just because I will say, as a devil's advocate, just because somebody says one thing when they get elected and then they go down and they do something else, that's not necessarily corruption. It is, it's an example of the flip-flopping and basically politicians saying anything. It's not necessarily illegal or corruption, but it should only happen one time. And when they come up for re-election, there immediately should be people who said, you said this, and we need a candidate who's actually going to do what they say. Is that kind of like does that make sense to you?
Yep, that makes perfect sense.
I want to talk about a couple of the major issues. We've talked about your thoughts on the PFD. There were two other big issues that, of course, were front and center this year. Predominantly was education. And of course, education was a hot button issue from some of the powers that be in the legislature. The news media picked up the flag and carried it for all it was worth about how we were devastating education by not fully funding it or by not increasing the funds or not doing whatever. And it became the political football of the year. It was batted back and forth between the House and the Senate. What is your thought on the current state of, for example, the base student allocation, the BSA? They said that, we haven't done anything with it. We of course, they don't talk about the fact that we've funded over that amount for 5 of the last 7 years. We've funded over the base student allocation with additional funds. But what are your thoughts on where the state of education is, how much we're spending now? Should we increase the BSA? Should we look for more accountability? Should we look for more efficiencies? Give me extemporate here on your thoughts on education.
Well, I think if we're going to increase the BSA, we should have results first. We are dead last in pretty much everything. If they want more money, they need to start, producing better results when it comes to education. We can't just keep, throwing money and saying that's going to fix the problem, because it's not fixing the problem. If they want more money, they need to do better. So I don't have a problem increasing the money if they start doing better first.
Right. Well, the accountability, but again, Mike Shower and a couple others tried to put some accountability measures in with this kind of increase, and they've been solidly opposed to that. The powers that be and other legislators have been solid. The answer is more money. Why, Russell? The answer is more money, no matter what. Is this a money problem, or is it a fundamental problem in the education system itself?
It is definitely a problem in the education system itself, and we need to solve that. And I'm hoping that we get enough new people this year
that you can make a change.
Yeah.
The base student allocation. Right now we're at $600 or so of the base student allocation. Many proponents were saying that it needed to be $1,400, a doubling of the BSA. Is the BSA, in your opinion, where it needs to be based on your studies? Is it where it needs to be right now, and we should make do with what we have? Or
I think now we should make do with what we have, since
that be the way that we increase school funding.
I think for right now, we should definitely make do with what we have, because we don't have no money, except to give ourselves raises. We don't have no money. They say that we're broke, so how can we give them more money?
Right.
And like I said, I'm not against increasing it a little bit.
What other solutions would you have in fixing the problems you just talked about? creating a better product, right? You talked about having better outcomes because we're in the bottom of the barrel when it comes to scholastic achievement. Any other ways that you would see to change this, to change the outcomes? I mean, any ideas on accountability? I mean, have you looked at the Read by 9 program? Do you think that's going to be good? I mean, where are you at with that?
Um, I think that, I know both of our kids are now homeschooled. I'm so glad that got kind of fixed. I think, more parents need to get involved. I also think that teachers need to be held accountable for not producing results. And like I said, I'm not against increasing the BSA. I think it should be like at 800 at some point, but we have to start producing results. But it definitely not 1,400, not 1,500. I think that's an unrealistic number.
You just said, both of your kids are now being homeschooled. I mean, I homeschooled all 5 of my kids as well, so that's something that's near and dear to my heart. Do you think that there should be more options for parents to choose? Should there be the school choice? Should there be charter schools? Should there be something like backpack funding, where the funding is not going to the schools, but it's following the student regardless of what institution the kid attends, that the money should follow the child rather than go through the school system in that way?
Absolutely. We definitely need more home funding options. And I'm not against public education, because some kids actually thrive better in public education because they need the social aspect of it. But, the one size fits all policy does not work.
Yeah. The second issue that came up, not as big as I thought it was going to, although it seemed to be just wouldn't die. It was kind of like the Energizer Bunny, is this issue of defined benefits. This is an issue that came up early in the session, was brought up in the Senate. It died in the House, although there was plenty of push from the Democratic minority to try and to bring it up. But this idea that they need to revive the defined benefits program, it's the only way to get good state employees, to fix the problems of low employee retention and all these other things. Again, ignoring the fact that we still owe about $7 billion to the previous defined benefits program in unfunded liabilities. What are your thoughts on the defined benefits program versus the current issue, which is defined contributions? What are your thoughts on that as we go through?
Well, I don't think we should start something new when we can't afford the old stuff. If we ever catch up, then that's when we should have that conversation.
How do you explain? I guess that's a good point. I agree with you, but again, extemporized on this and explain to me, if somebody came up to you, you were in the legislature and they were a fan of defined benefits, make the argument for me. Why? They say we need the defined benefits for employee retention. It's the only way we're going to get good employees. They're not being competitive with other states in their retirements, and it just this makes sense. What is your argument to people in that regard when it comes down to how would you argue that out? Give me a little bit more.
The first thing is, how are we going to pay for it? We can't pay for it. It's all about not being able to pay for it. It's not that it's not a need or a want, but we can't pay for it. If we can't pay for it, we can't have it.
So it's a who pays argument for you then. Who pays, and how do we do it? If they come up with some other kind, what if they said, we'll institute some form of tax, or we'll take more of the PFD to pay for it? What's your arguments there?
Well, when it comes to the PFD, if there's enough money after a full statutory PFD for the next 3 years, then you might have a good argument, but there's not. I firmly believe that we don't need a sales tax or an income tax to solve our problems, although my opponent she believes the 75-25 split, and then she also wants to do a sales tax and an income tax, and I'm against both, having come from Washington where we have both. No new taxes.
We're talking with Russel Wyatt, who is a candidate for State House in District 19. running. That's, again, the east side of Anchorage, and he has come on board to discuss with us his candidacy and talk about the issues surrounding us. We're about to go to break, and when we come back, we will continue with Russell for one final segment. Coming up in hour 2, Julie Coulombe will be joining us, representative for State House, running for re-election in District 11. But we'll be back in just a moment right after this with Russel Wyatt. We will continue right after these messages.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, Russel Wyatt is our guest. We are continuing with him here in just a second. Kelly says, when did he change from a Dem to an I? Also, how does that happen? Apparently, the Michael Duke Show is how that happened. Russell was interviewed here in the last election cycle, came on as a Democrat, and by the end of the show, he was like, because I was challenging him on some of the things that he was saying, I'm saying that's not a Democratic Party thing, and he said that was his change. So I guess that's gratifying that we can point things out to people. She also said, I know how hard this is. Kelly has run for office as well, so good luck. And thanks for stepping up to him. Kyle asked a question. How do you deal with the available gas shortage? That's, of course, the big issue for folks in the South Central area, this crisis that we keep hearing about, that NSTAR and others have been talking about, the legislators are pushing through. And there's this discussion on how do we deal with the available gas shortage? Is it royalties and credits? Do we look at importing LNG? What are your thoughts on that? When we lost him, he just disconnected. So maybe he has GCI as well. Wouldn't that be ironic? All right. We'll wait for him to reconnect here. People say if you hear an echo, yeah, it's because he's not wearing headphones or earbuds, and so you're hearing my voice on his computer. I've been doing my best to mute him down when we're talking, but we'll see. We'll see what happens here. What is his voting record? He hasn't held public office before, so he doesn't have a record to go on. I like a lot of what he has to say. I think he needs to flesh out his knowledge and his understanding of everything, and be a little more specific in some of his answers to talk about some of these issues. We'll see if he can reconnect, or maybe he just lost all internet. Maybe he lost all internet for the would be totally ironic as a GCI network engineer. That would be the height of irony. Timothy says he's obviously nervous, but good luck to him on that. Let's see. I'm going back through here. Randy, of course, says, do not enshrine the PFD. It will become a universal income. Thanks, Randy. Let's see. I'm going back up here. Let's see. Yeah, with that, Kyle said, because he keeps talking about the legislator pay increase, and he said if we cut that, Kyle did say with the legislator pay cut, he only has $798 million more to go. It's a huge number. I'm in favor of paying a full statutory PFD, but how do we change it? How do we pay for that in other ways? I mean, it could be cuts, but let's be realistic. These guys have a hard time cutting $8 million, let alone $800 million. That's a near impossibility at that point. It's crazy. Citizen voting record, said Timothy. Oh no, his voting record, not his voting record. So he used to vote. Yes, he voted Democrat until he appeared on the show back in I think 2019, 2020, he appeared on the show. And I remember it because by the end of the show, he was like, I'm not a Democrat after all. I thought, he thought because he came from Washington State where it was D's and R's, there was really no independence apparently. And so we educated him. We educated him a bit on that. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. All right. Well, I'm not seeing him reconnect. Let me send him an email and telling him that if you can't reconnect, just finish up. Okay. All right. I just sent him an email. And we'll see what he has to say there. Do I have any? Do I have a phone number? I do have a phone number for him. Let me do that here. I got about 60 seconds here before we're gonna run out of daylight. So let's see if we can get him back on somehow before we get started. This is the one listed on his website. Okay, we'll try that one more time here. See if we can get him on board before we get going on. We'll try that instead. Maybe, maybe not. All right, we got about 10 seconds before we return.
Your call has been forwarded.
And that would be a big no. All right. Well, here we go. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. Let's do it.
The Michael Duke Show, proudly splitting the left versus right dichotomy. Yeah, I had to look that word up too. I don't think it means what he thinks it means. Here he is, though. That guy, Michael Dukes, the one with the show.
All right, welcome back to the program. It is the Michael Duke Show. Broadcasting live across the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or FM translator. We were just talking with Russel Wyatt, and we lost his connection. I don't know what happened, but unable to reconnect him at this point. We were right in the middle of a conversation when the system, which again is ironic. He said during one of the commercial breaks that his daytime job is as a GCI network engineer, and his internet crapped out. So there's some irony there. Maybe he immediately had to go to work. I don't know. Let me go fix this. I'm not sure exactly what happens. But we do have this final segment here. If he reconnects here in the next couple minutes, we'll bring him back on to talk about it. I guess I'll give you I hate to call it a critique, but let me just say this. I like the earnestness of what Russell's saying. I mean, he's very earnest about it. But unfortunately, I think he needs to get more down into the details of the issues to understand them a little better, to be able to articulate them a little better. One-word answers are concise, but they're not helpful in a lot of ways when you're like, you can't just say because and then not give me a reason or talk about it. So I hope he continues to fight this fight and move forward. I'd love to see somebody else in District 19. Genevieve Mina is the current incumbent. I've also sent an email out to Kaylee Anderson, who is the registered candidate on the Republican ticket, but have not heard back from Kaylee yet. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm hoping that we can. I'm hoping that we can get more. Like I said earlier, I sent out well over 100 emails to the registered candidates on the websites from the state's website. The state has a list of all candidates with their contact information and everything else. So that's another thing. If you ever want to talk to a candidate or find out more about where they stand, most of them have that information on the web. You can get their emails, their phone numbers, everything else. So you could call them or email them or whatever. What I did find interesting was there were several candidates. Maybe I think it was less than 10, but of all the candidates, there were candidates who had like no contact information, which kind of blows my mind. How do you propose to interact with anybody if you have no website, no Facebook page, no phone number, no email address? But even worse is the ones who had contact information and then it bounced back when I sent the email, like the email addresses didn't exist. Why would you do that? That's an attention to detail thing, right? For me, if I look at something and somebody's like, oh, when I'm reading an email or something and they've not capitalized or misspelled, or to me, that's an attention to detail thing. I mean, I'm not the most organized guy, but at least I can use proper punctuation and capitalization and make sure that when I write an email address, it's correct, kind of thing. So it's one of those, it's anyway, it's interesting to say, where's mine, says Harold. It's in your email that is listed on the state of Alaska's website. You probably should check your filter. I sent the email just like I did last time, Harold. So check your email is what I'm saying. Harold's like, where's my email? Harold is our resident cynic and also a candidate for state senate. It's in there. I made sure to send it to you against my better judgment, Harold. I sent you the email to invite you on the program. It was, it's probably in the junk file. No offense. Yeah, possibly. That possibly could be. Again, not my problem. All right. Well, I know that we're going to be talking with Julie Coulombe because she's in the green room right now, scarfing down my virtual donuts. Dang it. I wanted some of those. It should be, just don't eat them all. We're going to continue here in just a second. There are a couple stories that I will touch on real quick. Let me see. There was a call. My phone was on silent, apparently. I think that was Russell trying to, let me see. Oh no, that was me talking to his voicemail, apparently, because I got his voicemail when I tried to call him. Anyway, there are a couple stories that I did want to touch on briefly before we went any further. I didn't think I was going to get a chance to talk about them today. This was the interesting one. How much time have I got? I got enough time. So my wife was talking to me about this last night, and I was surprised because the last I heard, this whole Kroger-Albertson merger was on hold. But apparently it is still piggly wiggling in its way forward. Albertsons, of course, owns Kroger. Albertsons is the company that owns Safeway. Kroger is obviously the company that owns Fred Meyer's and many more. So there's a discussion about merging Albertsons and Kroger's together, which would give them, they say, enough horsepower to be able to better compete with big retailers like Walmart, Costco, Amazon, those kind of things. And the problem is that in many states, Albertsons and Kroger are the only two games in town. So part of the merger, as a way to placate some of these things, would give a grocer called CS Wholesale Grocers ownership of the stores listed in what they call a divestiture plan. CS Wholesalers they own Piggly Wiggly, which ironically enough, there used to be a Piggly Wiggly in Fairbanks, but they've been around for a long time. It's one of the largest privately held companies in the country. Most of their stores are in the South and the Midwest, but they were planning on divesting a certain number of stores from Alaska. 18, in fact, were on this list to divestiture. So they would then become, I don't know if they'd become Piggly Wigglies or they'd be calling them something else, but they'd be owned by C&S Wholesale Grocers. Interestingly enough, most of them in Anchorage, the Gamble Street cars, Northern Light cars, DeBar, Diamond, the Huffman one, the other Northern Lights, because there's one on each end of Northern Lights, the Abbott Road, the Seward Highway one, the Business Park Boulevard one in Eagle River, the one in Girdwood. They would all be turned into, I guess, Piggly Wiggly's is what I'll say. It's CNS, so who it is. But I found it interesting which ones they decided to turn over. I note that they did not turn over the cars in Homer, so that will now become part of the new Kroger-Albertson merger. It'll probably be a Fred Meyer's. I'm assuming that they're going to rebrand whatever store they want. They can't Fred Meyer's, which I think would be good news for people in places like Homer. Both Fairbanks stores would be gone as well. Both of the Kenai Soldotna stores would be, the Kenai and the Soldotna store would be gone. And the cars in Palmer and Wasilla would both be gone. So it's like they took the big chunk out. I don't even know how many stores Cars has in Alaska, but that seems like the majority of the Cars stores in Alaska, to my mind. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stores in Anchorage, the Eagle River, both Fairbanks stores, the Kenai Soldotna store, the North Pole store, the Palmer Wasilla store, the Juneau store, the Girdwood store. That pretty much, I think, is most of the stores. So anyway, I don't know when this is going to go on. The FTC sued to block the merger in February, saying the deal would eliminate the competition and lead to higher prices for millions of Americans. But apparently it's become a story. They've listed the divestitures out, and maybe they think that will be a better, give them a better edge in this FTC case. I guess we'll have to see what happens there. But it's 18 stores listed right now. I don't know how many stores they have statewide, but it looks like the majority of them. The only one that I could think of right now that's not listed here is the Homer Cars. So I guess we'll see what happens there. All right, well, we're coming up to the top of the hour. We did not hear back from Russel Wyatt, so we will call that an end to that, and that will bring us over to hour 2, which is Julie Coulombe, candidate for re-election in House District 11. We'll be talking with her here in hour 2, and we'll be back. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Michael Duke Show. Oh, Ketchikan has a Cars not listed as well. Oh, that's very true. Probably Ketchikan, Sitka. Probably both of those places. So most of them. All right, we got to go. Back with more right after this. Okay. Frank says, no. Mary says, Mary has campaign ads that said she stopped the merger and saved Alaska from overpricing. Yeah. It's not Lena Khan and her campaign and vendetta and vengeance against all small businesses in America, or large businesses in America at this point. It has nothing to do with Lena Khan, the head of the FTC. And her, her relentless attacks against everybody, big tech, small tech, big grocery, small grocery, doesn't matter. All right. Yeah. Leela says, Mary Pertola is claiming on a taxpayer-supported campaign ad that she stopped the grocery merger. Is she lying and making us pay for this propaganda? That's called franking ads. Those are franking ads. And those are meant to inform the district on the things that have been accomplished in Washington. It is the most insidious use of government funds that I can possibly imagine. But yeah, she's out there doing it. It's, it is. Sharonda Smith just said, my name is Sharonda Smith. I'm running for District J against Forrest Dunbar. I just got a text from Russel Wyatt saying he is having a problem with his phone. He's working on the issues. He apologizes for losing the connection. Okay. Well, thank you, Sharonda. Sharonda, if you had an email listed, if you had an email listed, which you do, on the state's website, I did send you an email as well to invite you on the program. So if you would like to answer that email, I will schedule you out as a candidate guest to talk about things. There you go. All right. Well, let's quit the yapping for a moment. Let's do a test here. Let's get Julie Coulombe up on the program and see if we can test the connection, make sure everything's good. She's there. Her mic is muted, so she's going to have to unmute herself. There you go. How are you?
I'm doing well, Michael. How are you doing?
Good. You all ready this morning?
Hopefully I am. Well, very interesting conversation with Russell this morning. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, it was an interesting conversation. I hope you're not on GCI this morning.
I am. I thought that was hilarious that he lost connection.
Isn't everybody on GCI? It seems like. I mean, it's tough. I mean, he did say it. He goes, they don't want to replace anything because they don't have to. They're the only game in town. And for the most part, he's not wrong, which is unfortunate. Competition matters. I do have a Starlink, and I've been threatening to set it up and connect everything. When I first got it, it was a little spotty. So I tested it and everything, but we'll see. We'll see one of these days.
Just forewarning, I am on GCI, so if we lose connection.
Well, we always tell people if one or the other of us drops, like if I just disappear, you just keep talking because they can still hear you. Okay. And then I'll pop back in. And if that happens, and of course, if you hear the ding, then we're jumping back into the radio here.
Got it.
We're about 2.5 minutes out. So let me get caught up on the rest of the comments here real quick. I just wanted to test your connection, and we will be back to you here in a mo. Julie Coulombe, our guest here, getting ready for hour 2 of the Michael Duke Show. Okay. Brian says, don't Costco, Target, Walmart, and Three Bears also sell groceries? Yes. I mean, I know. To me, it was a ridiculous argument. It really was. Because, we buy, most of our groceries are bought through Costco. For my family, because I've got a lot of people here, right? I mean, I got 5 adults essentially, 6 adults, 5 adults in one home, or young adults and adults, and it just makes sense that we buy a lot of the stuff at Costco. We shop at Fred's for ancillary stuff that we can't find anything else. But I just never thought that this was. I never thought that this was as big a deal as everybody is making it out to be, especially when they said they were going to divest. Maybe Piggly Wiggly would bring in a better selection, maybe better produce. That was I will tell you right now sorry, I got to crack this window. It's a little warm in here today. That was one of the biggest shocks to us when we moved south from Fairbanks. I thought, oh man, we're going to go down here towards Anchorage, live in Wasilla. It'll be great. The produce will be amazing. And because, and then we found out that the produce was even worse here than it was in Fairbanks. And then I logicked it out and realized it's because they were trucking it up and they had to come through Fairbanks to get to Anchorage. So they were dropping off in Fairbanks a couple days before they dropped it off in Anchorage. But I will say that Costco does have the best produce in town, period. That's it. That's a good deal. I'm looking here. So I bear, what is this? You bear at least part of the responsibility for GCI not upgrading to Starlink. Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's true. We'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens on this. Ryan says, let's have a Harold v. Kevin debate. Oh man. Oh, I think I'd rather watch paint dry at this point. That would be. Let's have a paint staring competition. Just scrolling backwards here to see if there's anything else. This Golden Eagle table syrup thing. That's what you should do, Harold. Visit a Piggly Wiggly's in rural Georgia and pick up some Golden Eagle table syrup, which I hadn't heard about till last year. Somebody in the chat room mentioned it. I'd never had it. Apparently, it's delicious. It's like it's like the South's version of maple syrup. It's delicious, apparently. I don't know. I never had it. I mean, I have some Caro syrup in my cupboard. Maybe that's the same thing? Question mark. All right, we got to go. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Hour 2 is right now.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the interwebs at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Welcome back to the program. It is a beautiful hump day. Might actually see some sunshine today. I mean, fingers crossed. We'll see whether that comes out or not, but at least it's not snowing. We're going to check this out here and get things ready to rock and roll. We've got joining us here this morning. We finished up prematurely in the last hour with Russel Wyatt. He lost his connection. His phone died or something. He sent us a message and apologized, but Russel Wyatt was our guest. We may talk to him again here before the major election down the road after the primary. Meanwhile, we're continuing our discussion with candidates, both new and incumbents, for a variety of statewide offices, and we're going to do that again in this hour. Joining us now in hour 2 is Julie Coulombe, who is an incumbent running for State House as a representative of District 11. She joins us this morning to talk about woodticks, lunatics, and politics, the three things you should never talk about, apparently. I thought it was sex and religion, but it's woodticks, lunatics, and politics. Julie Coulombe joins us this morning to discuss all these hot topics. Good morning, Julie. How are you?
I'm doing well, Michael. How are you doing? Thanks for the invite.
Well, thank you for coming on board. It's another beautiful day in paradise. All right, Julie. Well, we've come back around to it. You've spent your first foray into the madness that is the state of Alaska politics, and you threw your hat into the ring again. My question then becomes, why? Why did you? Maybe didn't you see how crazy it was the first time? What's going on? So let's give people, for folks who don't know you, give us a little bit of your background and who you are, and then we'll get into your moment of insanity there. Let's jump in there.
Yeah, well, you're not wrong. So, so I am representing House District 11, and I know you don't have too many Anchorage legislators on here too often, but my district is the South Anchorage hillside between Abbott and Huffman, and I've lived here. In this house, 26 years. We've lived in Eagle River for 10 years. We lived on Fort Richardson back in the day. So I'm a lifelong Alaskan. I originally came up. My husband was in the active duty Army. So he's a retired Army. I have 2 sons who are in the Air Force Guard. One just moved from active service to the Guard. And so we're a military family. And my background is basically business management. I started in marketing and advertising, graduated from UAA, and as life kind of took its twists and turns, I landed more in the business management side because I enjoyed that a lot more than the marketing side of things. And so ran some large retail stores, Alaska clubs, that sort of things, operation manager, hiring, firing, budgets, all that. So, and I've shared this before, the reason I got into this in the first place really was around COVID. I have a political science minor. I've always been interested in politics. I've been a lifelong Republican. It's not something that I took lightly, always voted, but my husband and I have 4 children. We both have worked, sometimes both of us working at the same time or one or the other. And so I was just busy. And so I couldn't do something like this. The time commitment to be a legislator is enormous. And so when, right before COVID, we had both retired, bought a place in Homer where we were going to retire and live the life. And I just couldn't let go of what was going on in Anchorage. So I got politically involved in the city level, was on some boards and commissions, and then was asked to run for House District 11 a couple of years ago. So it's been an interesting journey going from a constituent. I never held a public office before. I was a complete no-name in my district. With redistricting, the seat had become open. It used to be Representative Laddie Shaw's district. And when the seat opened, then I went ahead and threw my hat in and did a lot of work, a lot of door knocking, and trying to get my name out there. And then with ranked choice, it actually took round two for me to win. And so there was like this delayed victory from people because they thought my opponent had won because the first round he did win, but the second round, because I had a Republican in the race, I won the second round. And so off to Juneau I went.
Off to Juneau you went. So now you've been down there.
Yeah.
You've seen how the sausage is made. You've seen the madness. And you've decided to take another bite at the apple, to take the second red pill. Why stay down there? Did you accomplish what you wanted? Are you partway? Why run for reelection if you're in that phase of your life where you're like, we're ready to retire, we're ready to go do our thing, but you just can't let it go? Why is that? What do you think?
Well, persistence and determination. I'm not going to just go dip my toe in there, find out what's going on, then run away. And so I think what I found, there's 2 things. One is that this session, we had a huge number of freshman legislators like me. Some had held public office before, some hadn't. But I think it gave kind of an injection of a fresh perspective on things and a willingness to kind of look at issues that in the past, there's just been a lot of contention around, and they're still there. But for the first 2 years, when I went down as a freshman, I landed on finance of all things. And so finance is usually for those, more seasoned legislators that had their head wrapped around the budget. And so I had to do a lot of homework, which I enjoy. I enjoy the work. I enjoy working on budgets and policy. And so I saw a lot of opportunities where things could be different. And so I am running for re-election to hopefully follow through on some of those things that maybe we would like to see different. But I will say this, and I've told this to people when I'm door knocking. I am fighting for Anchorage. We are fighting for our life here. The Republicans, there's only 5 of us, and one of them is in a blue district. And so I'm not willing to give up Anchorage. There's a lot of jokes down in Juneau about Anchorage, like, oh, that's Anchorage, we know, and it's a liberal city, and it's really not. It's just that we have to galvanize the conservatives to vote conservatives in office, and all these things like you were talking about with Russell, and things you talk about with Ben Carpenter and Brad. Those things can only happen if we get a majority. And I know that there's a lot of conservatives want us to do more in Juneau, like backpack funding and fiscal plans. And that can't happen until we get more conservatives elected. And the biggest chunk of seats that we give away to the Democrats is in Anchorage. There's 15 reps here. 5 of us are Republicans. We only have 2 Republican senators, one of them being Kathy Kiesel. So I'm just really passionate about Anchorage. I'm not giving up on it. I'd like to see a couple of seats flip. We've got some really good people running against Democrats in Anchorage. And, you know, when you have candidates on that might be new, like Russell, or are trying to dip their toe into this scene and they're from Anchorage, you know, maybe they don't have maybe they're not polished, or maybe they don't have the information that I'm privy to because I was there for 2 years. So I got to learn all the details. But it's really, really important, people up and down the rail belt, to know that, you know, and you've said this, Michael, as Anchorage goes, so goes the state. And so I'm running for re-election. So Anchorage has conservative representation. We need that from the city. It's where most of the population lives. And so I couldn't just let it go after 2 years. I'm going to try to get in there 2 more years and see if we can make a difference, and hopefully with a real majority, so we can make those hard choices that everybody wants us to make.
I mean, you're right. Especially when you're coming in and you're brand new, a lot of times it's hard to get a handle on that. But I will say, one of the things that impressed me on our first interview and our first meeting ever was that you had a handle. You had a solid handle on the budget. I mean, as you said, that was your job in real life, was budgets, business, and hirings and firings, et cetera. You had a real handle on that, and I think that's why you ended up in finance because of that. You know, I have high hopes that you can, you know, find some of these efficiencies and other things. I don't agree with everything that you've done. Obviously, we had the little kerfluffle before over some things, but I think that you're right. We need a solid conservative majority to try and shrink down the size of government. We've got a problem in this state, and I don't think that anybody that's being intellectually honest with themselves would disagree that we have a financial problem in this state, that the numbers all point to the fiscal cliff, and it's coming. There won't be enough PFD money in the future to continue to fund this appetite for spending. It will go away. There will be no PFD. And then the question becomes, how do we pay for it? And so maybe we can touch on that to begin with. Let's talk about the PFD itself right now. I mean, $1,700, part of that, $200, $300 of that is an energy rebate, or whatever. But, you know, the PFD should be $3,700, according to the statutory formula. And we have ignored that. And there seems to be no appetite to even really talk about. I don't even think there was a vote in the House on the statutory PFD this year. I know there was in the Senate, but so what's going on with the PFD? What are your thoughts on the PFD here? We've got about 3 minutes or so before we gotta go.
So just to begin with, nothing's going to change with the PFD and the way things are happening until we change the Senate. Nothing. The Senate is like a big brick wall for us. We can say all we want, and I've always told people, obviously, I want to follow the law or change the law. That's what I went down there with. And we, you know, in House Finance, we put forward about a $2,300 PFD, which is not a full PFD. But when I went down there, I had $1 billion deficit that the governor's proposed budget. That's what I started with. $1 billion deficit. It had a full PFD. Well, that's nice, but where's that billion coming from? And so it kind of, you know, I was looking at it. This was $1 billion deficit before the legislature even had their hands on it to see what our priorities were, what we wanted to do, or bills or anything like that. So I obviously would like to change the law or follow the law. I voted for HJR 7. I'm a big fan of Ben Carpenter. He's been such a great mentor to me, and I have no problem with voting for the fiscal plan, following through on that. That's fine, but it was very clear that I didn't even have the votes in finance to do the things we wanted to do, Michael. So I think that's why my focus is so. I've been so focused on trying to get a decent majority, because we can talk about all these things and talk about the deficit, but there's no appetite in the legislature now to really take those on. And I thought HJR 7 was really pivotal. I thought that was super important to pass, because that forces, well, first of all, it puts the vote in front of people, but it forces the legislature to say, okay, you have to pay it out. So you have to deal with the statutes. And if we could deal with the statutes and deal with it outside of that, we would have. And that was happening before I even got to Juneau. So I understand the situation. You can't, like you said, you pay it. If you pay out full PFD, where's the rest of the money coming from? And
right.
And
who
then,
pays?
Who pays? Yeah.
That is the big question, because it's an $800 million hole, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the PFD itself is an $800 million hole. And I would love to see $800 million cut out of government, but where's the political will to even cut? Like I said, we couldn't even, it's a fight to cut $8 million out of government. How are you going to cut $800 million out of government?
Right.
We'll continue this discussion with Representative Julie Coulombe, incumbent for House District 11. She's running for re-election. We'll continue this conversation in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We continue right after this message. Back with more after this.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show, because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
All right, Julie Coulombe is our guest, and I'm just going back through some of the comments. Julie, never read the comments while you're on the show.
I know. You got a tough audience, but it's okay. I can take it.
Sometimes it's deserved, and sometimes it's Gary says, I call BS. Anchorage is a liberal left-leaning city. Alaska as a whole is starting to lean left. I'm going to say Anchorage it's a purple city. I mean, It has blue leadership right now, but I think what we saw in Anchorage, I mean, first of all, we saw Bronson get elected. So we know that there is a core of conservatives in there, but we also know that all these damn people have ADHD. They cannot pay attention for longer than 5 seconds. And they lose focus and they wander. This is the problem with, the difference between the progressive and the conservative movement is the progressives seem to be very much communal, kumbaya. We all hold hands together and move in one direction. And the conservatives are more rugged individualists. You can't tell me what to do. And it's like herding cats with a shotgun. You can't get them to get out there. But I think a lot of this is just frustration. I think a lot of the conservatives are not Republicans. They're probably conservative independents. Right. And they're so sick and tired of the polarization and the he said, she said, and the shouting and the name calling and all the political BS on this divisiveness that I think a lot of them have just kind of thrown their hands up into the air and wandered into the pucker brush and said, whatever, you guys do whatever you want to do. What do you think? Am I wrong?
Oh, no, you're not wrong. So I don't know who made that comment if they live in Anchorage, but I've knocked thousands of doors in my district. And that's what I find. The Republican and registered Republican and Democrats in my district are a very small percentage. They're usually nonpartisan. They lean conservative, but they're frustrated with what's been going on. A lot of it is frustration on the national level. They watch a lot of national news, and so they think it's all just like that. I would have to say that, in Juneau, we organized in a day into it, and we ended on time. And the Senate played nice this year as far as the budget, switching the budgets. And so we did calm things down in Juneau, but it's not loud enough to overtake the national stuff going on. And so, they're just frustrated, but they're in there. And I've had several conservatives who's, I knock on the door and give them my card and like, no, I don't want that. I'm not doing anything. I'm not voting anymore. You do whatever you want. And I plead with them, like, it's not just voting for me. We need you to come out, but there's definitely a frustration with the system. But if anybody lived in Anchorage during COVID, that just checking out, that's what you get. You get all your businesses locked down. The schools are down. You're all wearing masks. It's unacceptable to me. And one of the things I get flack for is that I push into traditional liberal circles, where conservatives have kind of just run away. That's childcare is one, behavioral health is one. And I push in because I think the conservatives need to not just let them have those things, because that's and sometimes I guess it could be a bad look. But if I'm not engaging in all these issues, then where's the conservative voice? They're just spending money and making policy, and the conservatives are sitting on the sidelines. So I try to be at the table and push.
I had to. You said you finished on time, but did you really? I mean, did they really? I mean, with the whole after
we're an hour and a half late.
Yeah, well, I mean, I hate to say it, but the Constitution says done, and I mean, that was mind blowing to me, quite honestly. That because you ignore the statute, it's one thing, but when they ignore the constitutional deadline, that's something completely different. We're 30 seconds out here, so we can't. Maybe I'll start the questions. I'll start with this question into the next segment, because this was a thing that just really my eyebrows were up into my hair, and I got a tall forehead. They were way up into my hairline. Like, what is going on? How do we think that this is a good idea? And why didn't it get immediately called out by somebody as point of order? We need to adjourn, kind of thing. So we'll get your take on that here in just a second. Julie Coulombe is our guest. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Let's do this.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay, Julie Coulombe is our guest, representative for District 11, running for re-election. We were just talking about things in the break and status and states, and we talked about finishing on time. A House did not finish on time. I mean, they were an hour and a half late. I mean, 90 minutes is still 90 minutes, though, Julie, right? I mean, the Constitution says midnight, you're done. And I mean, I know people say, but I was only an hour and a half. Well, that's like saying we only went into nuclear war a little bit, right? It's still.
Well, that's a little dramatic, but
yes, it's called hyperbole. Come on, it's my prerogative to use hyperbole in that
nuclear war.
I mean, we only nuked them a little bit, right? It's only 90. We only went 90 minutes beyond the constitutional limit. I mean, like I said, my eyebrows went right into my hairline when I saw that this happened, and I'm like, why was it not called a point of order? Why was it? What happened there, and why was it allowed to occur? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, first, I didn't have much power to stop it. I'm not the speaker, and so there was a lot of things going on that I wasn't privy to. I will say that Representative Carpenter did do a point of order and tried to stop it, and it kept going. So, I was new here. I'm not really sure. We tried, Representative Shaw did a signing die. It's got stopped. The minority
4 times, right?
Stopping, yeah. So
3 or 4 times the signing die.
Yeah. Yeah. And Representative Carpenter was very clear in his point of order that this is not constitutional. So it was a little crazy for me, not really knowing, as a member of the body, not someone in leadership, what I could actually do. The point of order had already been made. We've already it just kept going. So I'm not sure what to, make of that. I knew that anything after midnight wasn't really going to go anywhere if a bill passed or whatever. I mean, it was hung up on the election bill that the minority wanted, but I didn't really have the power personally to stop it. I could have walked out, which was that I was getting ready to do, just to walk out and say we were done. but around that time they finally ended it. So,
Yeah.
but when I say when you look at the scope of things, when you say we ended on time, there was no special session going on. We didn't extend it 30 days. We couldn't, all the chaos. As a constituent, I was a constituent a couple of years ago. I would watch Juneau, and it was, a lot of it through COVID, which was just a hot mess. But all these special sessions and the chaos and no one getting along and they couldn't figure anything out. I didn't find that to be the case this last year. There was some crazy moments, no doubt, but
Right.
from what in the context I was coming from, what I had been watching years prior, it was a lot calmer, a lot less dramatic. And I don't know if there's an actual decision made, but I don't think those few bills that passed after midnight are gonna go anywhere. It's
Well, the
pretty
governor
clear.
said he's not going to. I mean,
Yeah.
he said these are not constitutional and they can't be signed. I mean,
Right.
they will face challenges no matter what's going on.
Yeah. So,
All right. Well, let's talk about the hot button issues from this last session, which I'm sure will reappear in the upcoming session as well.
yes.
Obviously, number one, which was taken up by everybody and their mother, including the mainstream media, who just basically parroted the narrative that seemed to be coming out of the educational industry with no real analytical thought or accurate reporting. And that, of course, is that we are killing our children by not giving them the proper educational tools that they need. We're not funding education. We flat funded it. We haven't funded it. They've lost money. We heard all the stories. Of course, if you look at the numbers, you realize that that's not necessarily the case.
Mhm.
But education funding, it's going to be big. It was big this time. It's going to be big next time. What are your thoughts on the educational funding, the BSA? You mentioned backpack funding here earlier as well. That's a hot button for many of us. But we're looking at all this in a system that's delivering a product that is substandard, subpar, and yet they continue to ask for more money. What are your thoughts on education?
Well, that was a tough vote. So when obviously I want the performance to go up. I think I did. One thing I kind of moved on, which is why I voted for SB 140 initially, was I could see that inflation was really putting the pressure on, especially outside of Anchorage, and the energy costs, the gas costs for transportation, those things. And I understand that. That, to me, from a business perspective, that's a fixed cost. You can't reduce it. You got to heat the building. You got to, drive the buses and whatever. So I went into it with a really open mind. I homeschooled my kids. My kids were all over the place. I had one graduate from public high school, one graduate from a private Christian too, and I used charter schools. I used homeschool. So I've experienced all of it. I just want that for other parents, that they can take their kids and whatever their learning needs, wherever they do best, that they can have that choice. And this turned into a crazy anti-charter school debate that somehow the charter schools and the homeschools are taking money from the neighborhood schools, and we need to increase the neighborhood schools. I take exception to the term flat funding. They have not been flat funded. The BSA has been somewhat flat, but that is just a piece of the school funding. They have there's been a lot of money poured into the schools.
Yeah.
And I really struggled with that whole thing. If the Anchorage was asking for 1416, like that's outrageous. We cannot afford that, nor can we pour money into a system that's obviously broken. So and I talked to everybody. I talked to the NEA. I talked to anybody who wanted to come to my office and talk about education funding. And I would just say, look, I'm open to what you're saying. Are you open to what I'm saying? Which is, let's look at some reforms. Let's look at some changes. And they just weren't. They weren't open.
What, just accountability, right?
No,
I mean,
yeah.
I know Mike Shower put forward the motion to increase the BSA, but with an accountability measure, and they riddled it full of, we can't have accountability. I mean, they're not willing to listen to any other side of the debate. You talked about flat funding. The BSA was mostly flat for a period of 7 years, but they failed to mention the fact that 5 of those 7 years, they included millions of dollars over the funding formula.
Right.
Out of 5 of those 7 years. I mean, to the tune of some years, it was $50 million on top of the funding formula.
Right.
So this is, I mean, it's nonsense, but it's nonsense that the public is eating up, and portions of the public are eating up because the news media is complacent and they do all this kind of stuff as well. And that's all we're hearing about, how we're killing the children.
Well, especially me. Yeah, because I mean, I had that one moment in the Capitol when all the kids came into the Capitol with bullhorns and everything. They came to finance looking for me. And so they came into the finance room and then surrounded me and was yelling. And, I used my old skills of calming people down in retail and just having a conversation. And I sat there and talked to those guys for like 45 minutes, and they would say, why don't you raise the BAS? We want more BAS. They don't even know what they're talking about. No, they're just yelling at me, And so I can take that. That's fine. My biggest thing is, the biggest struggle I have is I'm super passionate around education. I do believe it's so important for our economy, for our families, for everything. And this has been reduced to one thing, an increase to the BSA. And there's so much more to education than that one. And I'm not just talking about funding, but access, buildings, curriculum. This isn't the only thing we should be arguing about. And right. My kids, I used to go to school board meetings over 20 years ago, and Debbie Osiander and Harriet Drummond were on there, and they were changing curriculum. And I was one of the moms saying, please don't do this to our schools. The curriculum you got to stay on phonics. Because I was thinking of homeschooling at the time. They switched the curriculum, and here we are. 25 years later, miserable. So that's not necessarily money. That's
right.
Well,
and let's talk about that for a second in a breakout, because part of this is, is administrative. You talked about we have to heat the buildings, we have to do this. Yes, I mean, there are fixed costs on assets, but at the same time, we've seen the student enrollment is in a decline and has been for many years, yet the administrative overhead has continued to climb to where in some cases there's 3 administrators, sometimes 4 administrators for one teacher. They keep talking about the BSA, but there's no guarantee that the lion's share of that money ends up in the classroom. It's being consumed by overhead and IT and guidance counselors and all this other kind of stuff. When are we going to refocus that? There used to be a statute on the books that said 70% of that money had to go into the classroom, and it's not even happening. It's usually between 40 and 50%, and that's even counting when they count IT guys as part of the classroom kind of funding thing. So, I mean, when do we get to that realistic and honest accounting for where the money is going?
Yeah. So the admin, that rise in admin, what mainly the problem there is taking federal money. They need so many people applying for money and all the paperwork the state requires. It just keeps building. So the more money they get, the more admin they need. It just keeps building and building. The amount of that goes to the classroom was discussed in Juneau. Rural legislators have a problem with that because of some of their specific issues and unique things happening in rural Alaska that I can't speak to as well as somebody out there. But I think there was some resistance there. On the rail belt, I see no problem with requiring a certain amount going to the classroom. I wish that was the case, especially because my school district is the Anchorage school district. Right. And there's a whole host of issues that Anchorage has that the rest of the state, I wouldn't say is necessarily has.
Well, and in a lot of cases, this is a crisis of their own making, right? I mean, the Anchorage school district wanted 1413. Why? Because they took one-time COVID funding money and they used it to pay salaries, and then they used the salary money to prop up and start up new programs and everything else. They created this crisis themselves.
Right. And they also just spent $20 million on a brand new school to build one when
With a
they have to
declining enrollment.
close schools.
Yeah, with a declining enrollment. Right, exactly.
Correct. Yes.
I mean, it's the definition of insanity, and that is frustrating for sure. This issue is going to come back. 60 seconds. This issue is going to come back. What is your position as the issue comes back to you in front of you this next year?
I want the formula relooked at. I don't think the formula is working for anybody anymore. Hasn't been looked at in 30 years. Hasn't been really changed in 30 years. And that's a big piece for me is I want to get to the root of things. Are we going to argue about a BSA increase every year? It has been happening for a long time. And so we need to make sure our formula is working for us and make sure we know, that whether you have a higher energy problem in the rural areas or, and some accountability for how the money is being spent, I would like to see that happen. And I also, we need to do more math about these requests on increases. There's this just pulling it out of the sky, 680. Right. I never in finance ever saw the math to say this is exactly how much we need because of the math of this.
We should be talking about multipliers. We should be talking about a lot of different things when it comes to that as well. Yep. And what the homeschoolers are getting versus brick and mortar, et cetera, right. Et cetera. All right. Julie Coulombe is our guest. We're going to continue the Michael Dukes Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
Right.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Dukes Show.
All right, we're in the break with Julie Coulombe. Barbara Haney from Fairbanks, from the Fairbanks Assembly, says the required local contribution piece needs to change. She says the BSA, it isn't the BSA piece, it's the required local contribution piece. And part of that has to do with federal stuff, right? Because there's a restriction on how much many of these communities can pour into their own thing, where some communities want to spend more on education, but they can't. Their hands are tied because it would be unfair to other communities or something. I personally have never understood that. If a community decides that they want to spend more on education, then if community A wants to spend more than community B, well, that should be their choice. That's why people live there. They've made the choice together to do it. That would make sense. But that your hands are tied in some of those things.
Yeah, you're going to lose $90 million if you do that. Federal money.
Federal funding, right. Well, again, this is where we become dependent on it's the hook, right?
Right.
That's the bait and the hook. The bait is the $90 million, you swallowed it, and now you're on the hook for it. And if how are you going to replace that $90 million? That's the problem. Yep. And this is what they do, whether it's Woodsmoke in Fairbanks and they remove highway funds or whatever else, they beat you down with that money. It's free money until they start beating you around with it.
Well, yeah. And I think especially that is, not allowing people to contribute, have the local contribution, whatever they want, it's really sad that we have to all be funded equally and the feds will give us $90 million, make sure that there's equity funding. And I'm not a big fan of that. I think personally, I would rather let people have the choice at the local level, let them, which is risky for me in Anchorage, right? Because everybody knows my assembly. But I don't I represent Anchorage, but I have to take into account the whole state. And so I'm not sure. I think Alaska's had an identity crisis for a while regarding federal funds. Now, our budget's like over half federal money. There's a cost to that.
We haven't had an identity crisis. We've been held hostage. We've been subsumed, right? I mean, they were the crack dealer on the corner that said the first taste is free, and then everything else beyond that, you'll do whatever we say you do to get the next taste. That's essentially where we're at. I mean, we had politicians for years that bragged about bringing home the federal bacon, never realizing that it was cooking us more and more every time, and we became dependent on it.
Yeah, well, when I say identity crisis, like, are we a state or are we a territory? What are we doing? Well, like, there's been decades of so much federal funding that I don't think, most Alaskans even know what it would look like if we didn't have federal funding for all the things. So, the disparity test and the local contribution, that did come up, but people just don't have the appetite to let go of the money that we get for passing that disparity test. But it does kind of handcuff local communities. They can only, contribute so much. So
we're going to talk here in just a minute about, I'm sorry, Barbara just said the method of calculation of full value determination is tied to the assessment issue, and education funding is driving those problems. Sounds like you and Barbara need to get together and talk a little bit more about this.
Yeah, Barbara, for sure.
It's a methodology. There are pieces in the full value determination that fall outside of the equity.
Oh, okay.
So
I would like to talk to Barbara about that more. That would be great.
Talk to Barbara about that more. She is an economist, so maybe she can give you a little bit of a insight into that. We're going to talk a little bit about the defined benefits and any other upcoming issues. We will talk a bit about childcare as well in the next segment, and then you can give folks, who you are, where you are, contact information, how they get a hold of you. What's the and Barbara just dropped her phone number in the chat room in case you read it down there. What has been the reaction? You're talking about knocking on hundreds and thousands of doors. What's the reaction in the community been, other than people throwing their hands up and saying, I'm done with politics? What has the reaction been from your constituency out there? We got about a minute or so here.
So I have a lot of oil and gas people in my district. I probably get more questions about gas shortage and, everything about energy than a lot of legislators. Defined benefits definitely has come up more than education funding, actually. Education has come up. Those are the top, and also snow removal. A lot of snow removal questions. Because we are really struggling here the last couple of winters. I don't know if you know that, Michael. But
oh yeah, I was shoveling 6 foot of snow off my driveway into my lawn with 6 or 7 feet of snow on my lawn. I know all about snow removal.
Yeah, so those, I would say, those are the top issues that I've dealt with, knocking doors.
Rick says he wants you to give back 50% of that pay raise. Your thoughts on it quickly? I got 20 seconds.
Absolutely. I was totally dead set against the pay raise. And I'm going to give it back to my community.
All right. Julie Coulombe, our guest. We're continuing here. One final segment, The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the things. Let's do it.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
All right. Julie Coulombe is our guest, candidate for the State House, District 11. She's the incumbent, running for re-election. We're continuing our conversations now. A couple big issues remain. Obviously, defined benefits. This has been a huge issue. You guys, I know the Reason Foundation came in and gave presentations about this. There's a big push by the unions and by members of the legislature who are massively supported by unions to push this thing. That it's the only way to get good employees. You got employee retention problems, you got employee vacancies, you got all this other kind of stuff. And it's all because they don't have defined benefits. But we still owe $7 billion in unfunded liabilities to the first go around on defined benefits. And they want to include this now. It died after it came out of the Senate, but of course they were really pushing for it. What are your thoughts on defined benefits here, Julie?
I found that most people who think that's the golden ticket have never managed people before. I managed a lot of people, and I managed a lot of people at minimum wage. The way you get people to stay is a good work environment where they feel like they're growing, they feel like they're respected, they have input into whatever you're working on, the business or whatever it is. And their schedule is adapted. You adapt their schedule to make sure they have a family life of some kind. when I was running retail stores, I couldn't give them a huge retirement. And yet my turnover stabilized. You can produce an environment that want people to work there, even if the pay's not great, let alone retirements. I'm not against state workers having a retirement. That's
have a
fine.
retirement. They have a retirement that's better than 90% of the private sector defined contributions. They've got a better.
When I've heard people complain about it, I was like, well, welcome to the private sector. This is what we have, but it's not good enough. And so I just think that a lot of people that think that that's going to stop turnover and it's going to win the day they haven't run people before. I'm sorry. I have lots of stories. One story I had was I took a job that was really, really good income, really big increase in income. And I was like, yeah, let's do this. I had no life. My hair was falling out. I had headaches all the time. It was miserable. I lasted a year. It's not worth it. If you give them a defined benefit, it's called golden handcuffs for a reason. It's obviously it's an incentive to, stay wherever you are, but it's not going to fix all the problems that they're looking to fix, in my opinion. I think defined contribution, and obviously I was on finance, so I have a real eye on what's this going to do to the state finances.
Well, we never did see the second report, right? There was
supposed to be
a second report that came out because the Reason Foundation said it was going to cost us several $1 billion over the course of 8 or 9 years. And there was no second report that was supposed to come out. So that would have been interesting. All right, let's move on to gas and energy, the shortage. Julie, my opinion is that, we're looking at all these things. I think this is kind of a crisis that's been stirred up in some ways. But one thing that we're not looking at seriously is the importation of gas. I know everybody wants to burn Alaska gas. I want to burn Alaska gas, but we have to be realistic. Is it economical to burn Alaska gas to get it? Because it's stranded 800 miles away. How do we do it? Or do we, in the short term, and by short term, I mean 10 years, do we just say, let's get this importation thing going on for now, and then we can work on the economics of getting gas from the North Slope? What's your take on the gas crisis for South Central and the rail belt?
So I guess my take, I diverge from you and Brad a little bit on how to go about this, because I am absolutely against imported gas, and I understand the arguments. I've heard you guys talk about, well, if imported gas is the cheapest way, we should do this. And there's two reasons why I don't like imported gas. One is the security part. What I heard from NSTAR is that gas is either coming from Mexico or Canada. It's not coming from the US. I don't like having that vulnerability like we have with food. I don't think that's a good idea if we can avoid it. And second of all, if we have imported gas, NSTAR invests all this money into an imported gas facility. What incentive do we have to develop cook inlet gas? I think we will get stuck on imported gas forever, in my opinion. And it doesn't help us try to incentivize getting our own gas. And so for security reasons and in the long term, I think rate reasons, I'm not a fan of imported gas, although I listen to you guys, so I know what the other side is saying. But I would like to see cook inlet gas get developed. It's not a gas shortage. We have lots of gas, which is what I've been having to tell constituents. We have the gas. It's just difficult to go get the gas economically. So that's where the struggle is. And I know you were following the royalty relief bill that passed the House, and there's good arguments against that and for that. But I supported it because I don't think if government can do anything in this situation, if we can take some of the tax burden off for them to incentivize them to go get it, then, I was willing to do that. There's not, I would love to say that this is all about the free market, but it's not. That's not the situation that we're in most cases in Alaska. So if you let it go, if you do imported gas, or you don't, and I know you consider, I think you consider royalties a subsidy. If you do that, and the rates will skyrocket. and these decisions were made way before me. These have been subsidies that have been going on around oil and gas for a long time. But I don't think that's best for families right now that are being smushed by inflation, and then just jack up all the rates because importing gas is the thing right now. I understand why NSTAR is pursuing it. They have a responsibility to make sure they have the gas supply, but I'm not a fan. I don't think that's where we need to move forward.
Well, the subsidies are going to cost us one way or the other, whether we subsidize it through a royalty relief or we do some kind of government grant or anything else. The bottom line is the citizens are going to pay, and they're probably going to pay a higher rate anyway versus imported gas, because it's going to be more expensive in the long run to get it to market, whether it's from the inlet or from the slope. It's going to be more expensive, and that's part of the problem.
Well, maybe. I mean, you're saying that we can just import gas and everything will be fine. There's a lot of infrastructure that needs to happen for that to happen. So that's going to raise the rates too. So I just think long term, if it was something like a pipeline and there was maybe the state put money towards pipeline and the rates went up, for 10 years, 15 years, but in the long run, it supplies gas and the rates come down, just like Bradley Lake. So, Bradley Lake was super expensive, brought the rates up, but they just paid it off. And so now they say it's the cheapest, energy on the rail belt. Well, there was a lot of investment in that initially. I would like to look at it long term. I don't see imported gas is our answer long term. Could be our answer right now, but
long term, yeah, no. I mean, like I said, in the short term, we should have something to fall back on instead of forcing the crisis to get worse, because we make bad decisions when it's in a crisis. That's
I agree. I disagree with that.
I wanted to talk about the childcare, but we're out of time, so I'm sure we'll revisit that sometime in the future. We're 90 seconds here, so I want to give you a final bite at the apple. Your elevator pitch, anything we didn't touch on that we should touch on real quick? You got 90 seconds.
Yeah, well, I wanted to make sure I get my information out there. So if you want to email me, it's julieforalaska@gmail.com. If you want to visit my website, it's julieforalaska.com. Facebook, Julie for Alaska. So Julie for Alaska, if you look it up, you will find me on all the different platforms. I love getting email. I get lots of emails from people. I love having conversations. I appreciate Barbara putting her number. I'm taking you up on that, Barbara. I'm going to call you so we can have a conversation. And my biggest thing is that I'm basically, from a couple of years ago, a constituent. This is someone that has been engaged and has gotten educated, but I'm really a voice for somebody who has not been in Juneau very long. And that's an advantage. I also do the homework, and for me to land on finance and to do the work I did, I take my commitment very seriously, and I will do the work that's needed to push conservative principles through.
Julie Coulombe, running for re-election, House District 11 out of Anchorage. Julie, it's always good to talk with you. We need to do this more. I appreciate it. While we don't always agree, it's always good conversations, and I appreciate that. All right, folks, we're out of time. Tomorrow, it's going to be Justin Ruffridge and Rob Myers, The Michael Duke Show. Common Sense Radio. All right. Well, Julie, you know the drill. You get the final bite at the apple here. Anything we didn't hit on or whatever else. Sir, wait a second. I do have to ask this because he did say this earlier, and I forgot. We ran out of time. We didn't get to talk about the things I wanted to talk about. Kyle says, "Sir, you failed to ask her what you asked about them all. How do you fill the $800 million statutory PFD hole?"
It's a good question.
It is a good question because if I was king for a day, an emperor, and I could just wave the magic wand, shit, I would cut $800 million out of that government and watch everybody cry. That's what I would do. Right? If I was all alone, that's what I would do. I would just cut it. But we all know that that's not feasible, right? I mean, there's no political will. Like I said, we fight over $8. They wouldn't eliminate the unfunded positions from 2 years ago. They said, "Oh, it's what problem? It doesn't exist." I mean, it's millions of dollars, and yet we're gonna get them to agree to an $800 million cut. So how do we fill the hole, Julie? How do we do that?
Okay, so in my humble opinion, there's a couple of things you can do. One, obviously, is cutting, but cutting requires repealing some statutes and some things that we have required the government to do. It's a little more methodical. That's why I appreciated Rep Stapp bringing that forward. He did the work. He found where he could cut. Even in my cuts to the budget, this isn't going to fill the budget hole, but you got to start coming down, right? You got to start bringing it back down. So you start on that path. Two is economic activity. And I know with Pika and Willa coming, everybody's like, oh, you know, the big money's coming. It's not going to be coming for a while because of the production tax. So that is a good future, you know, that will be coming, but it's not like those things, the economic activity and the things that the state taxes, the corporate tax, the mining tax, if we get things going, you will start getting more income that way. The first thing that everybody says is they want an income tax. The fiscal policy group suggested a sales tax. I'm open to new revenue, but I can't do any of that unless we have a spending cap and we have the PFD settled. So I'm open to a sales tax if the other work has been done. The other thing that nobody ever says is designated funds. Michael, there is so much money in designated fund. Oh my gosh. It's not designated, it's dedicated. Billions go on the Department of Revenue, what the funds that they are in charge of. There is so much, billions of money that has been stashed away for a specific thing, and we can't access it anymore. It's happened for decades. I have found so much money, and that money can start to fill. If you can get your hands on some of it and use it like it's supposed to, you can use that to cushion the cuts, right? So maybe you cut a little bit and then you use some of your designated, dedicated, whatever you want to call it, funds to cushion the blow. That has been my biggest revelation on finance. Like there's a ton. Alaska has a lot of money. They have a lot of money.
All the buckets out there. The Constitution does not allow for dedicated funds, so they cleverly call it designated funds and then treat it like they're dedicated.
Yes.
Which is it's insane. There are billions of dollars, whether you're talking about the PCE or all these other funds that are out there that are being used, and they're basically. And again, I mentioned the unfilled positions. We got unfilled positions that have been unfilled for over 24 months, and they're using them as slush funds. Millions of dollars being used as slush funds. I mean,
not just millions, like 20, 40, 50 million. Representative Carpenter and I both tried amendments to cut that, and we couldn't get that passed.
It's I mean, it's insane.
And so those were the things, those kind of three-prong attack for me is, that's kind of how I see it. That, it takes a lot of work and it takes the majority to get that kind of stuff through.
And you mentioned the Pika and Willow thing. I mean, and Brad, we just had this conversation yesterday about this, that people don't understand how the oil revenues work. These new projects, there's going to be higher production and there's going to be less income. In fact, there's going to be less income for the next 8 to 10 years with higher production because of the way things are structured. Nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to talk about ring fencing. Nobody wants to talk about amortization of investment credits and all these other kind of things because they don't want to offend the oil companies. But we're going to have more production. And everybody's like, oh, yes, boy, it's going to be big money, sunshine and rainbows. And they're not realizing as they look at the numbers, it's going to be less money. And that's shocking. Nobody, they all say, we're waiting for the big payday. Here it comes. They're going to increase revenue. No, they're going to increase production, but the revenue is going to remain static and flat for the next 8 to 10 years.
Yeah. That's why I say long term we'll see it, but for right now we're not going to see it. We talked about that in House Finance. That was made, in my opinion, that was made pretty clear that there was going to be an issue there. So that's not something that I'm banking on. I'm excited though for economic activity. I'm so grateful that it's happening. I'm grateful that they're hiring and they need truck drivers and there's a lot of great things happening. But is it going to rescue Alaska in the next 8 years to fill the gap? No. I think that came up when we saw the governor's 10-year plan, the slide of the 10-year plan, it was just like red. So,
well, that's the thing. The 10-year, every updated 10-year plan over the last, 18 months has basically said deficits for as far as the eye can see. The permanent funding is gone because they're going to consume it all. And then what do? Then how do we fill that gap? Well, they come to you and me and they say, free rides die hard. You guys got to pay your fair share now. And it will be a tax. It will be an income tax or a sales tax or some combination of that. That's coming because they look at that and they go, that'll never happen to us.
Taking the permanent fund is just, to me, kind of a lazy way out of what's going on. Just deal with the issue right now. Just take the permanent fund check off the table. And obviously we need to figure out what we're doing, whether it's new revenue, economic activity, bringing all these dedicated funds down and making it work for Alaska instead of just stashing it in all these funds. There's a lot of things we can do. And I know people don't want to hear that. They want just an answer just do a tax. Just increase oil taxes or just do that. But the budget is much more complicated than that. And there's opportunities in 3 areas that I can see that you can start bringing it down. You're not going to cut $800 million in a year, but you can start bringing it down for sure.
No, but $800 million over 10 years or 5 years, much more doable.
Yes.
Still going to be painful because we're suckling on the teat of federal government money like it's no tomorrow. All right. Julie Coulombe, thank you so much for coming on board.
Thank you, Michael.
We'll see you soon.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, folks, we're out of time. We got to go. Tomorrow, Justin Ruffridge, Rob Myers. Should be an interesting discussion. Whew. What a day. We'll see you then. Have a great day. The Michael Dukes Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe. Be kind. Love one another. Live well.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Dukes Show.